So the problem, sticking keys, Clavinova CVP. So the problem, E key, and you can see it's twisted and holding against the D key, and it's sluggish to return. So swap the keys out. Plan is to take one of the other keys out because I don't have a spare. So the bottom or top keys very rarely used, but obviously this E right is probably the most used E on the keyboard, so needs to be changed. Let's find a screwdriver. So most important tools: selection screwdrivers, cavity, wagon wheel for carry. So first job, move the crap off piano. Before I start, one specially designed piano glass for holding the screws, so I don't spend 2 hours looking for the bloody last screw. And most importantly, unplug the mains. So back of piano, 1, 2 and 3 crosshead screws. Let's get moving. Okay, with the screws removed, slide the top forward. Okay, to remove the cover, we need to remove this screw here. We also need to remove this screw here and this plate to allow this rod to lift out, and do the both same on both sides. Okay, that's the screws and plates removed, and the same on the other side. Okay, so the top cover's removed. This is what we see. Scary. So next step, remove 6 screws, 1 here in the corner, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 to remove the panel. And then to lift the panel up, I don't want to take the panel out, I just want to get, because it's a keyboard, so this tab thing here is like a cable tie. Just release it to give yourself some clearance on the cables rather than disconnecting all the wiring. So it's just giving some free, but be careful when you move this because obviously all these cables are still attached. So around the front of the keyboard, and as you can see, the top panel is resting on the top securely. Make sure that's pretty safe up there. None of the cables are being strained, they've all been released, nothing's been disconnected. I want to make this as minimal as possible. So the next step is to release the keys. You need to release the key and slide it out, but the front piece will stop it coming out. So you need to undo the keyboard, and there's these big brass screws all the way along, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those all the way along. Unscrew those, and then we're just going to move the keyboard, slide the keyboard back from the frame at the front. 2 more sneaky little brass screws down the bottom need to be removed. So just going to knock those quickly out. So the next step is to just push this keyboard carefully back. It's only got to move back very slightly, so let's just give that a go. There we go. And again, all the way, and then you can see the gap here to allow the key to front of the key to come off. Looking closely at the top of the key, there's a small arrow which indicates which way the release mechanism is, and also the marking for the keys itself. Keys are marked differently, each key, so depending on your key, just check that arrow. So all you've got to do is, and I'm going to put the camera down for a second, is this is the E, the offending E. Put a flat blade down, push gently down, and then lift up the front of this key. You'll feel, and it'll just pop up like that. Like so. It's quite simple. and then to release the front of the key, just push the key forward and it'll wiggle out, and that's the key removed. So there's the key removed, and there's the gap it's left. So what I'm going to try is take in a lesser used key for now, because the plastic keys, although they're marked, should all be the same. The weighting is actually in the mechanism itself, and then get one ordered from eBay or such like. I don't know why they get distorted, but if you look online, forums and that, for some reason some of these keys get distorted. So let's find another sacrificial key for the moment and swap it out and see whether we're good. So I've removed the key, the E key, from the highest part registry of the keyboard. I don't usually use that key very often, to be honest. So and I know I've taken the E key out just so I know which one to replace when I get a new one to swap them out. So that's the key slotted back in, and that's in the middle E position, and as you can see, much better. From appearances from the actual white key itself, there looks like there's no damage, there's no issue, so unknown why that's happened. So there's obviously some distortion there in the plastic, so I'm going to get a new one of those ordered. But then I'll do this simple test which we did before, is put the knife on both keys together and the actions returned exactly as it should have. So just as I was reassembling the keyboard, and this may happen to you, I noticed that you've got that thud, and that just not sounding right there, although I've disconnected this again. So I think what's happened is the spring's released inside, so I'm just going to take this key out again and have a look at that and reseat the spring. There we go, the key's removed, and if you look at this spring, the spring's completely loose. So that's why we're getting that rattly noise from there. So I'm just going to check out to reseat that, and then so we just need to reseat that spring. Spring is seated underneath two little lugs, and if you look back at the one I've just done, the high E, you can see that the spring is actually sat on top of it. So what you need to do is seat the spring in. So I'll take it out for clarity, and hopefully this camera can pick this up. So you slide it back into its slot, and then push it down so it bends, because it's obviously a spring, and then just release it so it comes back up underneath the two little plastic prongs, and then that's sat back in there like that, so it's not loose. The same as that one. So again, that's it now, so there you go. So that's the screws all put back in and all tightened up. These brackets, I believe that the top piece, this edge needs to slot into when fitting the top panel back on. So that's the keyboard on, just one last test. Beautiful. Not so beautiful, but there you go. We'll see how that goes, but seems to be miles better in that position than it was in the middle position, so maybe a free fix. So let's see. And you may well see these black connectors on the back of the circuit board, and obviously be very careful because the circuit board is above there, so you don't want to damage any of the circuit board when we're doing this. So you'll see the black connectors, which I'm pointing to on the circuit board, need to correspond to these aluminium brackets all the way along. There's four I believe, sorry. So there's four of those that need lining up and a bit of jiggling. So you need to do that from the back with a bit of light so you can see that they slot in there, and then that'll allow the top panel to drop back down into its position, lock at the front, and align with the screw holes. So that's the front panel aligned back down. It slides down under those brackets, so as you slide it down it should feed itself back on, but just make sure it all looks right and that the felt is obviously all in place and there's no gaps between the keys and the felt before you finally screw down holes in the back. So here's the screws back in position. You see they're all in finger tight. I put these in with fingers first rather than the screwdriver. You are right next to the unit's magnets on the top of the speakers. So just to avoid the screws jumping off your screwdriver, just put them in finger tight. This has got a degree of flexibility and movement. There are all the brackets for the tweeters. So just put them in finger tight first before you start tightening them all down. Just to get everything lined up. So you've got your 3 here, so 1, 2 and 1 up in the corner, and then the same on the other side, so 1, 2 and 3. So once they're all in and the brackets are all, everything feels lined up, you can go ahead and tighten those up. So that's the top panel all screwed in, back and tight. Just give it a bit of a pull back just to make sure everything's all nice and firm in there. And then don't forget the cables you've released here just need to be just reconnected back up to their respective cable ties, just to make sure there's no sharp edges there, just to tighten those up so there's no flapping wires lying around. So there we go, that's those done. So now we're ready to put the top case back on. Just the last check around, make sure everything is in its place, and those to put the sliding cover back on. So the rods need to drop into here. So if you angle the unit to start with, you can get the front rollers on the slides here. It's a good idea to clean all the dust and crap out of there. And then the rods actually drop into these places here, which the metal plate's covered up. So I've dropped the cover on. Okay, and what I did is if you can see, there are 2 pins on the bottom of the cover. So if you put this cover on at an angle, so start in that corner at the bottom and bring this one up, you'll find it gives you the clearance to get those pins in on the running track. Just make sure that you're doing that. You're careful of obviously the wood on either side. You don't want to put big gouges in there. So now if you come around to the top, you'll see that the mechanism is not in position. And we just need to pull this back and drop this into the track there. So we drop the gears engaged on the track. So there we are. That's the gears engaged in the track. It's a bit of wiggling about and they will drop in. And then the same on the other side in there. And then we just need to put these retaining plates back on, and then the top stops on the 2 rubber or plastic stops to stop this sliding up. But before you do any of that, so you just make sure that the unit is folding away, and it's difficult from this side, back correctly to line everything up before you put those screws in. Okay, one thing to note here with these metal brackets, they're a little bit fiddly, but the bracket slides in underneath. You may need to move the gear backwards forward slightly just to get that in. This metal bracket slides underneath these 2 plastic plates, so you need to fold it in and then obviously screws in there. But just be careful not dropping the screw. This late stage you want to take it all apart again. So magnetic screwdriver, very useful, but get that plate in place before you do that. So it doesn't sit on the top, it slides in underneath. So don't forget your 2 sliding top stops there. So the plastic collar, just to stop this piece coming up, the guides, and 1 either side just need screwing in. That's the 2 guides screwed in at either end, and now it's a case of just going around and making sure your sliding mechanism works correctly. Everything looks good. Panel looks good. Key, fabulous, and just making sure that shuts down properly, and that's all, nothing's coming off. Make sure everything's lined up, and it's just the last step is top panel back on. So the top panel you put on from the front first, so bring it this way, drop it down, and then it's sliding back onto the 2 brackets underneath, and that should go back really easy like that, locked on. And then you should, with your obligatory and compulsory piano glass folding screws, have only 3 screws left. If you've only got 3 screws left, you're looking good, and as long as they're the right ones, you've got your 3 holes at the back to put those screws in, and then it's a plug it in, and hopefully it should all work. So, moment of truth, empty piano glass, fabulous, and all plugged back in, sliding up, and power button, powers up, things seem to be working, all the lights are on, and no sound. The reason for that is I've got the MIDI switched off for my Korg W01. So let's just function, MIDI, and come out of Korg, go back to the all parts, and then some volume. And to be honest, that key feels absolutely fine. It is a little bit sluggish, so I will replace it and get a new one. Simple thing, but the key that I needed back in feels absolutely fabulous, and back the same as all the other keys. Job done. Excellent. Hopefully that helps you. Take care.